Welcome back to Death Toll Racing. We're on our tracker today. We're going to be doing the first of two lifts on it today. We're going to be doing this extreme budget lift, and then we're going to upgrade this lift in about a month or so when it comes in. And this is just spring spacers and rear shocks and strut spacers. It's just a bunch of spacers basically. It'll get you lifted, it'll get your tires on it. It's not going to be the best performer in the world. You actually have decent rear articulation, but the front is probably going to be not very good. Just to be perfectly honest, but it's going to be great for going out and having some fun. So, and that's all we're doing here. So wheels and tires. I am replacing those wheels. They're too ugly to even run. They're just screaming Vanilla Ice on they're ugly. So anyway, these are a Vision D-window wheel, 16 by 7. They're zero offset, which may bite me. We'll see though. And then this is an Extreme MT Mud Claw, which is basically just a rebranded Thunderer, which is a kind of an off-brand that's been around for a while, but they actually are a pretty good tire. I've had really good luck with them. They are so much a Thunderer, they still have the lightning bolts in between the tread and everything. It just has a different sidewall guard design and then a different name. But otherwise it's the same. They're pretty good tires. I've had pretty good luck with them. They're very heavy duty for this tracker. They're a truck tire. That's the problem with doing this 235 85r16's light truck tire. They're a very heavy rated tire, and this is not a very heavy rig. So future projects coming up, just a little locker, a Lock-Right drop-in locker, something anyone can put in their driveway. We're going to be doing some rigging outfitting. I'm going to be putting chainsaws, tree climbing equipment, and that type of stuff. I'm going to be making mounts and boxes and that type of stuff for it. We're going to be doing some guarding on it. We got to put some guards on it. I run over a lot of logs and a lot of trees and stuff doing out there, so we need guarding. We need a way of protecting that stuff so it don't puncture the oil pan or whatever. I am having trouble finding an oil pan, one that's still in production. Guard. We may have to make our own. We are going to make our own bumpers and stuff for it in the future episode as well. And then the other thing we're going to be doing that I don't have yet, but they're on their way, is a gearing for the transfer case. We're going to put a deeper 4-low in it, and then we're going to get a twin stick setup. So and that allows you to control your front and rear axle independently, which is extremely nice if you're going to be doing trail running stuff. We're going to be putting that in at the same time as the gearing because you have to take the transfer case apart to do both of them. So I'm going to do those in the same episode. So anyway, as I do this, I'm going to lay all the tools out on this table so that when we're done, you can see exactly, if you don't have an arsenal of tools, what you're going to need to acquire, borrow, whatever, to do this job or to do this task for you. So today, lift, wheels, tires, let's get going on it. We're doing it on the floor with Jackson Jackson. Alright, so I'm going to speed through this side as I kind of figure things out, and then I'm going to go into detail live with you here in a second on the other side. So you can kind of just get a feel for what it takes to do it, and then I'm going to get into detail and more on what I'm doing here in just a second. So first things first, I'll get up on jack stands and just jack the lower control arm up just enough to take the weight off. Then we're going to take the top 3 bolts out of the strut, and this is where I struggled on the inside, getting these studs out of the strut. I think I have aftermarket struts because they don't pound out. They were actually like threaded in, but they were kind of almost welded in mine. And yours may not do that, but that's why I had to get a little creative getting those out on mine. It says on the instructions just to tap them out. It's telling you to take the entire strut out. I'm cheating and I'm not doing it that way. But to get these studs out of here, Mine are threaded in, so I tried to unthread mine and they wouldn't unthread either. On the other side, they would just spin and basically strip out up there. And by the time you push them out, there's no threads left. So it's quite, I think if you were beating on it in a vise, you'd probably end up bending that if you can't clamp it good enough. So I think the best option that I came up with was cut it off flush, then use the air hammer to tap it out, or you could probably use a punch and a hammer, but the problem is you'd have to take that out to do that. You wouldn't be able to, you wouldn't have space, unless you had someone helping and you could hold it up in the hole and they could do it from up top, but you'd have to have someone down here holding it while you did it, and that would be an option too. But yeah, I don't think you want to just start pounding on that. If this is how they always are, you'd end up bending the crap out of that strut top. It's not very thick, so I think the best bet is to cut them off and then punch them out, whether that be by hand with help through the hole or using the air hammer like I did. So it is what it is. I'm going to try to lower this down. I think I can get this spring out. Actually, I'm not going to do it that way. We'll just use the clamp. So you don't want to get too crazy because you're basically bending this spring. Since we're only using one of them. I'm going to go ahead and let mine down a little bit more. Makes it easier to get this in there. And the reason I'm putting it on now is I think I could let it down enough to get it out, but I want to put this on so that it's in the right spot when we go to put it back together, because it only goes in there one way, and that way we're not getting ourselves into a situation where we have to take it all apart again just to get the clamp out. Now I have to let it down the rest of the way, and you want to try to keep the strut in. Don't let it pull your CV apart as you're going down. It came out. All right. There. So now all we have to do is just tap our spacer on. That's the shorter spacer. It looks just like the other one, so it's a shorter spacer on the front, and it goes on that way. When you leave the rubber bushing there, it says in the directions to leave that there and just put this, and this will, it says to tap it over it with a hammer so it's seated. Okay, it'll seat the rest of the way on its own. That's just so it's easier to assemble. So now we just put our spring back. I may have to tighten it a little bit more to get it in there. Yeah, I'll tighten it just a little bit more. Just be careful with this. This is not doing it via the instructions. The instructions tell you to take the control arm out all the way, and if you don't have a spring compressor and you don't want to rent one, you can rent them from auto parts stores. If you don't have one and you don't want to rent it, then you'd be taking the lower control arm off, essentially, so that you can get the spring in. I'm just cheating a little bit and doing it this way. I need to cheat it down slower. There. That's how you don't do that. It's not the right way of doing it, but it worked. If your axle your CV comes apart a little bit, just wiggle it as you push it back in. So one thing I learned on the other side is cut them off as flush as you can. Don't leave any sticking up, because then when you start hammering on it, it smashes it big. If you have to do this, you may not have to. On mine, you may not have to. If yours came out easier than that, you may not have to drill it. But I'm just going to go up one size so the new bolts fit through. There we go. Now your triangle spacer with the lip up, which will be pretty self-explanatory. It doesn't fit the other way. And then I put mine bolts pointing down. I think you could go either way on them, but that's how I did mine. Okay, so see, there it was stuck. You just spin that. Don't force it in. It's just your CV was kind of coming apart. And then on my struts, I got to stretch them up. And then I'm going to have to jack my control arm up a little bit. Okay, my car's coming up now, so that's going to be as far as I can go. There's 14 on the top, and then it's 13 on the bottom, which is weird. So there is the front lift. Pretty cool. I have my sway bar disconnected. I'm going to take it off real quick. Otherwise you would put your sway bar back on in there. It's just one nut on the bottom. Very easy to get it off. I'm going to take it off all the way because I don't really need it. So I'm going to take. You have to take the control arm bolt out, which if you were doing this per instructions, you would have had the control arm off anyway, and that would have been the time to remove the sway bar. I didn't, so I'm going to get the stuff to change that, take that apart, and get that out of here. Oh, it only saved me 5 pounds. It's very light, it's hollow. Alright, so now we just put our nuts and bolts back on our control arm. Alright, so now, for me, I got to take these guys off. I know they're going to hit the tire. I think our front bumper is going to hit the tire. We're going to replace that later, so we'll hack it however we have to for now. But let's take that off. Sometimes on those, if they just spin, you just pull on the plastic like that, it'll come out. So now, we can put wheels on it, on this side. Alright guys, I know the lighting in here is terrible, but mounting a wheel and tire. I don't really have time to try to do it on the ground. It's a pain in the butt to do it, but it is doable. And I'm going to show you basically the technique you'd use while I'm doing it on the machine. First, you got to put a valve stem in it. I have forgotten. I'm sure most people probably have. You get the wheel tire on there, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, and then you can't get it in. So just pull it in. There's a number of ways of doing it. If you lube it up, they pull in real easy. You could even just use one of those little T-handle ones that you see. Those will work just fine if you put lube on it. If you don't put lube on it, you could possibly tear it. So you definitely want to lube it. So just soapy water, or you can use conduit, wiring conduit stuff. That works good. The problem with it is so slippery that it tends to not dry. So this is actual tire solution in a little sprayer. That works really good. I don't know why more people don't do it this way. But anyway, so what you do, if this was on the ground, you get your tire, you lube up the bead, and I'm going to do it without the machine just so you can see. It's easy to do. I'm going to use the machine just to hold it. And that's the hard part, and that's where it's easier having the machine or something to hold the wheel. So if you don't have a machine, just take a pair of vice grips and basically put them on the lip of your wheel handle up so that they're kind of out of the way like that. I'm going to simulate that with this because I don't want to, these are brand new wheels and I don't want to scuff them up because I'm weird. But what you're going to be doing is basically you just got to get that lower bead into the smallest diameter part of the wheel, and then you're going to hit it up against your vice grips and then just basically spin it around it and it'll pop down. And that's going to do the same thing on the top. So you just got to push that down into the smallest part of the wheel and then spin it around and you have it. So I did that without the machine. I was just using that instead of the vice grip so I didn't scratch my wheel. And that's all there is. And then you got to blast your bead on. And if you don't have like a cheetah tank or a shark, this is a Stark tank, then you could do the lighter fluid trick. If you've never done it before, watch a couple videos. And basically my only advice on that is don't skimp on the starting fluid. If you don't put enough on there, all you do is light your tire on fire. You need to put a lot on there so that it's like an explosion when you hit it with a spark or however you're going to light it. Obviously don't have your face anywhere near it. I got it. I think better tire machines would probably have better blasters on them. That thing's never had a very good bead setter on it. That's the last one. That's all the negative suspension you have with this current setup. Is right there. That's it. Okay, so you have to buy another part. So they have these at I got these actually at AutoZone. These are a 1.75 degree cam, basically a cam bolt. And what it does is that it allows you to pivot the spindle here on the strut. So what we're going to do, because I think we need to go more than 1.75 degrees, we're going to put them top and bottom, and that'll allow us to really get some flex. It'll basically double that amount because we'll have adjustment top and bottom bolt. So we're just going to change them one at a time, and I'll show you how to do that. It's really easy. This washer thing that comes with them, that little tab, that goes in the bolt hole with the bolt. That tab keeps the bolt so it fills up the entire diameter of this, so that has to be there. You don't discard this thinking that it doesn't work on your application. It does work. It goes in the hole. These are meant for this diameter bolt hole, which it says right on it for 12 millimeter strut bolts. So this is a 12 millimeter strut bolt. This shoulder here is slightly smaller than 12, and then when you combine it with that tab that's on this guy, then it is 12. So that's how we do it. So I'm just going to change them one at a time. We'll just start with the top one. Oddly, there is a cam bolt on the other side, on the top, but it's not enough to correct it. So that's why we're gonna put them top and bottom. So now that just goes in there, and then you just get this guy in there with it when you find the right spot. Oh, and then one other thing with these, if you look very closely at the head, if I can get it to focus, you see how it has the triangle and an arrow? That's lined up with the bump. So that's how you know which direction that's pointing. So when we put this in there, what we'll end up doing is actually turning that to give us the most caster, or camber, that we can. Caster's different, that's this way. If you were to move the strut like this, that's caster. That we can't adjust with this, but we can adjust camber. So anyway, so that's what that does. So let's go ahead and get this pretty close to snugged up, but not all the way tight. That is a different size. It's probably going to be smaller. There we go. There we go. I'm just going to get it close, but not tighten it yet, and then we'll take this other one off. I'm going to have to go this way. So apparently they designed these things so spot on that they don't need alignment bolts. Either that or someone didn't put the adjustment bolt back in it. All right, there we go. I got the tab in the hole. Okay, so now we can start our adjustment. I'm just going to make it so it has as much adjustment as as it is, and I'm going to see how that looks, because I kind of have a feeling. So I'm going to point the top one all the way in. I'm going to point the bottom one all the way out. So the arrow, and it's almost at that point right now, anyway. That should work. So now, put your wrench in tighten, and then you're going to hold this while you tighten the nut. Okay, now let's put our wheel back on and see if we fixed it, which it looks like we're going to be pretty close just by eyeballing it. All right, now let's set it down and see what our alignment looks like. Remember, that's not a huge bolt, so you can't just completely hammer it down. So that's the most adjustment you can possibly get out of them, and it actually looks pretty close. We're going to call it close enough on this one. But if you're a street vehicle, you'll probably want to get it aligned. We're going to put our wheel back on. I'm just going to put on two lug nuts. Because we have to actually trim this part of the fender out. I think the outside of the fender we're going to be able to leave. We might just have to bend it in a little bit, but we have to cut this all out here. All right, so when I turn left on this side, that's as far as I can go because we got interference. So there's our interference. So it doesn't look like we're going to be hitting the outside fender because that looks like it'll probably clear the whole way. It's not back, so as the suspension goes down of here, at really any point in the turning. So as the suspension goes up, I don't think there's ever a time it'll hit here. That doesn't mean it won't, necessarily, like for sure, but it doesn't look like it's going to. But anyway, so that's where we need to cut. So is this area right in there. On both sides, it hits the exact same on both sides, which is good. But it looks like we'll be okay once we get rid of that. We may, in a compression situation, hit the firewall down there by the footwell, or we may have to quote unquote massage that a little bit. But we're gonna just start with this so that we can at least get the wheels to turn all the way now and make sure we don't have interference on the frame, which is quite possible too. That we're going to hit the frame, and that would be my offset of my wheels, my choice of offset, because I was trying to keep it in. I'm not trying to make this thing as wide as we can. I'm trying to keep it pretty much stock width, which we did accomplish, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work. So, okay, so when I cut it, I'm trying to explain how I did this, but I cut it down. I'm trying to save as many of the spot welds as we can so we don't have to do any welding on it. I put a cut in because we're going to fold this in, and then we're going to fold this in, but I want it to fold at two different angles right there, so I just cut it in there so that this will fold in, and then that'll fold in. We're going to come in this way, because I already think we may have interference in here, so I don't want to add any material out in this way, but in here we have a big pocket, so it should be okay to fold that in. And then I just followed along the pinch welds here, and then I cut the fender off, just from the outside here, just making a nice straight line to there, and then I put a cut in right there so that I can fold this up. This will fold in, then this will fold in, and then this will fold in. So that's my plan. So I'm not just going to go into this beating on it. I have a plan of how we're going to fold stuff before we just start beating on it. All right, so that's not folding how I wanted it to because it is still attached there. So I have to actually make another cut along here. I think what I'm going to do is actually cut that. And then we're going to end up cutting a part of it off. So you may be asking me why am I folding it and not just cutting it off? Well, it keeps it more rigid when you fold it, and so I did cut some of it off, but I wanted to keep that fold there. Otherwise, the fender kind of got real flimsy here because this is what's supporting this from going in and out, and without that fold there, this piece just bows up and down as you push in and out. So it just makes it more rigid. Now I'm going to actually fold the rest of the fender in a little bit. Don't go all the way, or it does kind of the same thing. It makes it flimsier. Trying to save your paint, which I'm not, your paint probably would have all failed where I just did that, and of course mine didn't, and I don't really care about my paint. I do care about it a little bit, but we're probably going to wrap this thing, so I'll need to put paint there, but I didn't care if my paint kind of fell off while I was doing that, and it didn't. If you care about your paint and you did that, it probably would fall off. That's just kind of the way it goes. So I didn't fold it all the way flat because I still want structure, and there's pretty good structure there. It's actually really strong. Don't weld these together because this fender comes off, so that's part of the car, and this is part of the fender, so you don't want to cut that. So we are going to go through and I'm going to paint all this so that we don't get rust forming in it. And I am really going to saturate it through there so that the paint goes in between, so it's going to be dripping, it's going to be ugly. But I want to make sure that we don't get rust in there. I mean, there is paint on it, but it probably is not really adhered to the paint or the metal where we folded it. So now I'm just going to continue my way up. As nice a folds as I can. So when you start getting crossover like that, that's when you're seeing me cut it off. So now I want to fold all this over. The spot welds are on this side, and this is just an extra piece. So I'm actually going to cut this little part off, and then we're going to fold over the lip that is left. That way we're not trying to fold. We basically would end up unfolding this as we came over to here. So I think we may as well just cut it off. It doesn't need to be there, and it's not going to affect strength. So I probably on this one won't go all the way till it's folded like we did down here. I think I'm just going to go until it's about kind of like we did on the fender down here, because that'll get it out of the way, and then we can get some paint in between. All right, let's put the tire on and let's see how we did and make sure that that's not going to hit right there. It very well might. We might just be that we have to cut the corner off or just bend the corner over. All right, so we are hitting the corner of the wheel well right in here. So we are gonna have to dent that in a little bit. Up here, I don't think that's ever gonna be a concern. Up here, we just have to work on that right there. And that's unfortunate because that's actually gonna be kind of ugly unless we did cutting and welding. The situation we are in right now can be resolved in a number of things, and it could have been worse in a number of other ways. If I had offset my wheels farther out, so the thing was wider, if we put wider tires on it, this problem that we're having with it hitting in the floorboard right there would have been worse if they were the same size tires just offset up. Because it would have been farther out, so as it turns it would be swinging farther, so it would be getting closer right there. So I tried to eliminate that by running the narrower tires and having the offset in. I think we're good with the offset in, but if beyond what we have already done is beyond you, or you don't want to modify your car that much, I would go with a 39.5. That is actually a cheaper tire to run. It's only 2 inches shorter total. And it's a lighter duty tire, a softer tire, so it'll actually wheel pretty well. And that would be an alternative to run it instead of running these 32s. They're 235/85s. So that would be my suggestion if you don't want to modify your car anything beyond what we're doing right here. I'm stuck with this, so we have to dent it. It wasn't ideal because what we did already looks really nice, but it's not going to look nice anymore. We're going to smash it in. I'm trying to debate whether I want to just cut that part off and weld a piece in there flat, or if I want to smash it in. So I might just smash it in, and then I may decide that that looks terrible, too terrible, and then we'll end up welding a piece in. I was trying to do this without welding, so that was the intent of this thing, because welding isn't something that most guys have the capabilities of doing, especially on this thin stuff. That's a hard thing to learn. There's a lot of material here to push in, and it's going to look really, really bad. I'm afraid if I start smashing it, we're going to be in a really weird situation. Yeah, I'm not even going to do it on mine, and you could totally do it, just smash it in if that's what you wanted to do. I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to be happy with it, so I'm going to just go ahead and cut mine off, just basically this corner like this. I'm going to cut it off, and we'll just weld a plate in on this one. But so as you can see right here, this is what you would do. This would clear a 39.5, maybe even with a little bit of offset if you wanted it to be kind of poking out a little bit. So there you have it. That would work. 2.5-inch lift, 30-inch, maybe even. Probably not a 31. I don't think a 31 would have cleared, but it may, and that would be up to you if you wanted to try, or just live with it rubbing on it right there. But it'll rub pretty hard. So I'm actually using the Fender as a pivot point and a slide. This is just a Harbor Freight body saw. They work pretty good. For as seldom as you probably use it, and for most people, it's good enough. I've had this one for a long time, it still works. So a guy could have, an alternative to cutting it out like this, you could have cut out just this side and the floor here, and then bent this back, this part back. And that would have saved you from having to buy metal to put in there. I was just thinking about that as the tire was on, that we could have done it that way. It's not that big of a deal either way. I guess a guy could too get sheet metal and rivet it on instead. Just make sure that there's all the paint is or all the metal is covered up so it doesn't rust. That would be an alternative. Or if you want to get artsy fartsy with it, you put license plate, use a license plate or something like that as the sheet metal for it, and then rivet it on. That'd be kind of fun to do as well. So the reason I thought of that is because what I think I'm going to do, as I'm looking at it, because it almost looks like I need to go up higher yet. I think what I'm going to do is actually cut out a little bit of a piece here. I may even just put a cut in it and then get the panels to overlap each other and actually bend this back a little bit, maybe up to here, because it still looks like in an extreme situation that we may hit in here. So I think I'm going to just do that. I'm going to give that a shot. I'm just going to cut it and just have the panels. I'm going to cut it right in the middle so that, actually, I'm not going to cut it in the middle because there's plenty of room on the other side. So I'm going to just go ahead and cut it up this body seam here to probably that seam there, and then we're going to just go ahead and flex it back. So now we need to make a relief cut out to here. I'm just going to come out going up at this angle. Stick the wheel back on it, see what we got. Yeah, the suspension would have to come up about 8 inches before it hit. And I don't think we have 8 inches of travel on it. And then, so what I think we're gonna do is I think I'm just gonna go in there and trim it so that that piece fits, and I think we will. I think I'm just gonna put some sealer in there and then rivet it, and then we'll make a rivet panel. That way we're not doing welding on it, so that way I can show you kind of how to do it with using rivets. You know, people may frown on that, and then maybe we'll use license plates. That'll be kind of entertaining to do. We can get creative with folding some license plates. So I ended up bending up a license plate and then just sheet metal screwing it in so that it'll hold it in place. And then I'm slowly just taking out each screw one at a time and replacing it with a rivet. Okay, so I'm going to take the bumper off because it's going to hit, and I don't want to just start getting into cutting the bumper. We're going to make bumpers for this here later. I'm going to put the structure back on, but it's going to be easier to take this bumper, the plastic part, off with it off. I already took that bolt out, and then it's that bolt. I'm pretty sure it's just those two bolts on both sides, and the bumper comes off. All right, so now I just took out all the fasteners holding the front bumper cover on the front bumper. Most of them broke off, and then I cut off any additional tabs and stuff that were hanging down, and then just put the front bumper back on. Now it's held on by 2 bolts because one of those brackets that I cut off was actually part of the lower mounting point. But we're going to make new bumpers anyway, no concern. So now I got the rear up on jack stands, and I'm going to take the rear bumper off now because I know it's going to be an issue later. So I'm just going to get it out of the way so that we don't have to deal with it. This one, you take the cover off while it's on the vehicle. It's actually attached to both the frame of the vehicle and the body of the vehicle. It's kind of a weird deal on there. So I took it off, found some pretty nice rust underneath it, and now we're going to get into the rear suspension. All right, I'm just going to time lapse this rear lift. So I'm just going to tell you basically what needs to be done. The shocks are what holds the rear end from falling down too far. That's basically your limit strap. So you need to make sure you have the jack under the rear end holding the weight off so that you take your shocks off, and then you'll lower the rear end down with it. The vehicle's on jack stands right now on the frame. So that's what we're going to do. So all you do is take the shocks off, and then you lower the rear end down, and then put your pucks in, and then put the up here, and then raise the rear end back up. The problem is you have e-brake cables and you have a brake line, and I will get back to you if those don't stretch long enough to do this. I'll get back to you so that we can address that live and not in time lapse. But if it works, it works. There looks to be a lot of slack on the brake line, but only time will tell whether that's enough. It may be enough, but we may be able to just cheat it by taking a bracket or something off. But we'll see. So first things first, let's take the shocks off, and you're going to time lapse. Okay, so far everything kind of goes as planned back here, except for the fact that my nuts were seized onto rusted onto the shock, so I had to cut it off. And no big deal, but that is something that may happen to you, when you're buying an older rig. Otherwise, it worked out as planned. Other than when we get to the shock, the lower bushing inside of the shock is not included in the new shock. So you have to take your old one out. And in my situation, that didn't go as planned. And here we go live so you can see what I had to do. Okay, so just put the old shock in the vise. Take a hole saw that's big enough to go around the sleeve, and we're just going to drill that rubber out. So you're going to have to pull this out to clear it quite often. All right, so now we just got to basically scrape the rest of it off of there. It's really annoying that they didn't give you these bushings with those shocks, but it is what it is. They're a universal shock, I guess. Your shocks these bushings may come out of yours easier. Mine are glued in, so that's what it is. That's good enough. So now we'll just get the other shock, and then we'll just press it in there. And then, so eventually when it gets real hard, that's because you're squeezing the tube, so then you can just kind of wiggle the shock on there to get it centered up. All right, so I got a little trick for you. So when you're just dropping it down, it's really hard to get these springs in and out. They're just a little bit too long. The shock's not connected. They're just a little bit too long to make it past that without wrestling it. It helps. What's happening is the center link, the ball joint in the middle, is actually maxed out. So it physically can't go down anymore because it can't bend anymore. And that's why. So that's right in the middle. So that means if you jack up the other side, this side goes down. And it'll go down a little bit, enough for you to get that spring out. I already started jacking it up. I'm going to jack it up just a little bit more. And I think that's going to help us just enough to get that guy out, and then you can get your puck in there. And then putting it back together, just because the puck's there, it doesn't make it any harder to put it back together. You're still just clearing that bump stop there. You don't have to hit those very hard to get them in there. And then the spring, you can see it when you took it out, how it sits on that bottom perch, so it only goes one way. And there's that. So now, if I actually let this side down, that side comes up. And then we'll go ahead and jack up just in the middle so that we can hook our shock on. Make sure that this is set in around the ring, and that's it. So now you just put your bottom shock bolt in, and you're done. All right, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. YouTube really holds us under the gun to get subscribers for whatever reason. So tools for this project, nothing crazy special. It was really a very simple toolkit that goes 10 millimeter to 17 millimeter is what you kind of need to get this job done. It's going to go smaller than that, and it's most likely going to go bigger as well. You need, so the shocks on the back are 9/16 technically. If you don't have standard tools, you only have a metric set, 14 will work on it. And you will need a crescent wrench for the top of that shock as you tighten that bolt. If you end up with the same shocks I did. Okay, so the wheels and tires are actually bigger. They're 19 or 3/4. I figured you could use the lug wrench if you had to on that if you don't have it. Spring compressor, you can rent one of these or just not get one. It is not required. You can do it another way. If you follow the instructions that come with the kit, you'll basically do it like I did, except for when I went to spring compressor it, you actually unbolt the lower control arm and drop it out. And then take the spring out, use a jack, put it back together that way. This is much easier, especially if you're by yourself. And you can rent those from the auto parts store. You basically buy it and then you return it and they give you most of your money back. But if you love it, you just don't have to bring it back because you already bought it. Okay, so the hole saw thing that I had to do on the bushings on the bottom. I thought about this later, but it's going to be, if you don't have this already, it's going to be cheaper for you just to buy new bushings than to hole saw them out. But before you do that, see if yours will just tap out. Yours may just push right out. Mine were glued in. And I don't know if that's normal or if it just happens to be that I have a cheap set of shocks. If you're going to have your rig aligned, the cam bolts that I put in, you can skip that whole step. You don't need to do that because the alignment guys will just put them in on their own. You don't have to go out and buy these. Just put it back together with stock bolts, drive it down there. And then they'll make it right and put the right bolts in that they need. So you don't have to worry about that. If you are doing it yourself, you're just building a trail rig, you just want to learn to do all that stuff yourself, 81250, that's just an AutoZone number. And that's where I got them because I thought that it would at least have top bolts in it, and I only had a top bolt in on one side. The other one didn't have fixed bolts. I don't know. That maybe yours will be different. step bit, I used this to drill out the 3 bolts on the top of the strut. You're going to need something like this to drill that out, and that actually isn't in my instructions. They just say that you hammer it out and then the bolt fits through it, but it doesn't. So you actually have to drill that out. So that's kind of a mistake on their part. Impact guns are optional. You don't really need those. Electric ratchets optional. You don't need it either. Normal ratchets would be just fine. A hammer, you're going to need this unless you're running something really, really small as far as a tire. I think even if you're running a 30-inch tire, you're going to need at least a hammer to do some of the bending. If you're going to run a bigger tire yet, you have to do the cutting like I did, then really there's a million different options for getting it done the way I did it. You could do it all with Sawzall if you wanted. Or you could just be brutal and just beat the crap out of it if you wanted to and not cut anything. So, you know, that's up to you with whatever you're expecting. It depends on what kind of rig you're building. You're just building something strictly off-road and you don't care that you bash it in with a sledgehammer, then sledgehammer away, it'll work just fine. My only recommendation is don't go into it thinking you're going to weld the panel in instead of riveting it. This is going to be very, very, unless you're a professional welder, this is going to be extremely difficult for you to weld on. They're very thin metal covered in coatings to make them kind of thicker. By the time you get those coatings off, which you need to do to appropriately weld it, there's not much metal there. Professional welder, you already know that, and you're not going to have a problem with it. But you're probably going to be TIG welding it. MIG is going to be pretty challenging on that guy. Maybe 023 wire or something. I can get into details on that, but that's going to be a challenging rig to weld on. I did the passenger side differently. I didn't end up using a license plate or any sort of filler metal. I will go over that a little bit. I lost the footage to it, but I will go over that on the next episode because I still have minor tire rubbing issues in certain positions. So I'm going to run that thing around and on camera with you guys with me, and we're going to figure out exactly where all those rubbings are, and we'll address them as we go. Okay, lots of future projects for that Safari wagon coming up, or for the Safari wagon, yes, coming up, and also for the tracker that you just watched. So anyway, thanks for watching. We're going to see you again soon. I think the next video out is going to be, and I needed to get this done, we got a 2021 Ram TRX, which is the Hellcat powered Ram off-road rig. I got beadlocks for it, factory beadlock stuff, but we got to put them together ourselves. We're going to do that one, at least on just the spare, probably just the spare we're going to do, but I think I'm going to put the lock rings on all the wheels. We just won't mount them. They're unique wheels. Anyway, check it out. They're pretty cool. You can mount them normal or you can mount them as beadlock. It's very, very different. So anyway, stay tuned for that. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.